Hey everybody. Sorry I couldn't be here today. I know you're all super disappointed. But what we're going to go over today is education again for the third day in a row. Just wanted to give you guys a lesson, even though I'm not there. I didn't want to miss a day. So we'll just get going. Only have a few slides to go through today, so it's nothing crazy. Just kind of follow along with me on the board. If you can't see, I will. This will be posted on Edmodo, so you can find it as well. Starting with Marxism, Bowles and Gintis, 2002, structure and organization of workplace is mirrored in the organization of schools. So Marxists, obviously, especially these two gentlemen specifically, believe that the workplace and school are mirrored. They do kind of represent one another, reflected and reproduced through the educational system. We'll just kind of go through here. I forgot to number the next two, but there's actually the three bullets here. School discipline students, related to attendance, adequacy of work, and telling people where they should or should not be. Obviously, this happens in the workplace. Another thing is hierarchy within the school is similar to that of the workplace. Obviously, in school, there's a hierarchy starting with the principal, working its way down to the students. The same thing with the workplace going, I guess you're from a very large corporation, you start with your CEO and kind of work your way down to the people who are obviously your working class, maybe working in the factories or what have you. And lastly, pupils have no control over the educational process, especially at the lower levels. A lot of times like the students, unfortunately, or even maybe the teachers, whereas we're kind of taught how we teach and you're kind of taught or you're told kind of how you learn, which a lot of times can be unfair. Again, this is the Marxist theory. So correspondence principle. This is something that the Marxist believes in. Neo-Marxist theory that argues that the organization of schools closely corresponds to the demands of the workplace. Lower level workers are given less responsibility. And then you move to your middle level workers, some responsibility, some independent work. And lastly, you have your higher level workers where there's an emphasis on working independently and taking control over academic work and work in the workplace, depending on what you're talking about. Now going to the next one, a little bit shorter slide, told you, again, get through it relatively quickly here. Relationship between education and the economy is based around cultural reproduction. This essentially, the definition's right here, it's higher social classes try to reproduce their leadership and privileges. The way they do this is by investing time, money, and resources into the education of their offspring, and they're hoping that by investing time, money, and resources into the education of their offspring will in turn get a good education, get a good job, make a lot of money, and basically let that process continue. Again, cultural reproduction. Bourdieu, 1968, meritocracy is a myth. The idea that your place in society is based on your merits, according to this Marxist theory, is simply untrue. You can't work hard enough. Basically, essentially, it doesn't matter what your merits are. It kind of matters where you started out in society, especially in a capitalistic economy. This favors the ruling elite. The elite are allowed to pay for their education or can pay for their education, therefore basically they're going to get the better paying positions. Moving along to cultural reproduction, sticking with it here, formal curriculum plays an important part in cultural reproduction because it allows children of different classes to be separated into different employment streams at a very early age. An example of this, all through 1971, schools or an ISA or an ideological state apparatus. Teachers, an example of this would be transforming pupil consciousness or consciences by encouraging them to adopt like social position, their likely social positions. So basically, this Marxist view is kind of putting a lot of blame on the teachers or the educators or the administrators, basically stating that a lot of emphasis is put on the fact that you should kind of remain in your social class, you shouldn't try to move out of your social class, and essentially getting people to accept the fact that they are of the class that they're in, and there's nothing wrong with that. Vocational education within schools helps the ruling class. So we're talking about vocational education, and how does it help the ruling class? Here's two examples. It eliminates the working class children from higher level occupations. Oh, you go and do this vocational training. This way all the upper class individuals they won't have as much competition for those higher level jobs if the working class or middle class go and do vocational training. And also gives the appearance of people of the working and middle class being chosen. Or basically it gives the appearance that they chose the vocational school, or simply they failed to meet all the other academic requirements, so they had no choice but to go into those professions. Bates and Riseborough, 1993, another study done, contemporary forms of new vocationalism in the United Kingdom. Again, 1993, attracts many middle-class white students. White and black middle-class students are encouraged along the vocational route to the lower paying jobs. Again, this is a study done in 1993. I know, 20 years ago, but still relatively relevant. Again, white and black middle class students encouraged along the vocational route was found in this study. A little discouraging. And two more. Youth training schemes involve cheap labor that employers could use for a short time and then discard. So again, these are training schemes basically to train people who are unemployed or get people out of unemployment, but it kind of locks them in to this role, basically where they're working essentially for free in these training programs. And I'll give you some other examples. Basically what it does, if you see it on the second slide here, right there, or the second bullet here, it bonds trainees who actually couldn't leave this job at the risk of losing the benefits. So basically these training programs, Finn, 1988, the study is you have individuals who are part of these training programs and they're hoping to maybe get a job out of this training program, but really the people that have them in the program are just using them as free labor. And they're promising them benefits, which they are getting, but the people can't leave the training program, because if they do decide to leave it, they're taking a risk of losing their benefits. So it is discouraging, I think, a lot of times to the people in these training programs. It was found in this study that training was minimal to almost non-existent in many types of work placement, and it didn't cover the skills needed for highly technical jobs. So even when they're done with the training, they weren't trained in these highly technical jobs that are actually relevant in today's society. Criticisms about recent forms of government-sponsored work training programs, pretty easy to find your criticisms, especially from the Marxist perspective. It's designed as a voluntary scheme for those to take unpaid work up to 6 months. Mandatory schemes are compulsory. Long-term unemployment, people that are on unemployment for an extended period of time must take unpaid work, and if they fail to complete it, then they lose all their state benefits. And Davies 2002 goes even farther, further, I guess, and states that this is modern slave labor, essentially. You're locking these people into something they can't get out of because they'll lose their benefits. And the last thing we'll talk about, Young, 81, critics of the Marxist approach. Young, 1981, views the Marxist approach as like the left functionalism. It's the idea that education serves to meet the needs of the ruling class, and that's all education serves to do. He kind of states that that's incorrect to think that way. Criticized for characterizing working class pupils as passive. So basically, people state that the Marxist view kind of paints this picture of working class individuals as passive, and they're not going to essentially do anything about their situation, which I guess isn't true a lot of the time. Gloria Joseph, 1988, shows in her study shows a large body of black and Latino people were actually unemployed, and this could actually be attributed to poor school records and poor academic achievement. It's a direct relationship there. And lastly, choices are made by working and middle class pupils that reflect their interests, and schools should cater to this. That should be an approach that could be taken to kind of fix the inequality. Heath, 97, argues that Marxists reject all forms of vocational education because it encourages class-based cultural reproduction. And it can be argued that it does. Obviously, it's your viewpoint, which side you would take on this, whether it would be the functionalist perspective, or now we're seeing the Marxist perspective. When I return tomorrow, we'll look at the feminist perspective. But again, just wanted to go through the video with you. Hope it didn't bore you to death, but I just wanted to go through that stuff. Hopefully I gave you a little insight to the Marxist perspective on education. If you have any questions, again, we can go through it tomorrow. All I ask is that you answer these questions here on the last slide. If you can, just kind of pause the video and you guys can go through the questions. Answer these 4. You don't need to turn them in. Just hold on to them. And that's all I got for you. Guys, enjoy your day. We'll see you tomorrow.